Hey, this is Derek. I'm going to talk about hiring an editor or working with an editor, especially developmental editing. And this is because I've seen a couple comments in some of my Facebook groups tonight specifically about editing problems. This is an issue I've seen a lot from authors that come up generally in the conversation about do I need an editor? Because I usually say it's not the first or the most important thing to get. A lot of other people will say don't publish a book unless you can afford professional editing because your book deserves to be perfect or something like that. The truth is editing can be really expensive. I'll talk about prices in a minute, but I don't always think it's a good idea. It's not always a good investment to spend a lot of money on book editing because most authors don't make money from their books. So, spending a couple $1,000s for editing, another couple $1,000s for book proofreading, for formatting or book design or a website or all this other stuff, if your product, if your first book isn't actually earning any money, that's not a sound investment. That's an expensive hobby. That's the experience that most authors go through. And so I try to help authors publish cheaply to figure out or to learn what kind of things they can write that readers actually enjoy. Once you know that readers enjoy your writing and you can write more books that are making money, you can invest more in perfecting them or improving the quality. So the choices with hiring an editor, generally you can just hire a cheaper proofreader, which can be 1 or 2 cents a word, and they'll go through and hopefully catch typos, grammar mistakes. The problem is they won't catch everything. No editor promises perfection. They often promise like 90% or 95% if you really ask them about it, because nobody is perfect. I think personally an editor should catch just about everything, but in truth there's always something that everybody misses. Books, traditionally published books, go through like 3 or 4 rounds of editors, and I still find a couple typos in all books. So aiming for perfection isn't really what you want to do. And also, just paying for proofreading probably won't make a huge difference because they're not going to improve the writing and they're not going to change the story. So if you're just paying for proofreading, it still might cost $500 to $1,000 for quality proofreading and copy editing, to the extent where they might not rewrite, but if there's a repetition or if there's weird sentences, they may just rewrite things a little bit to improve the clarity or the writing. Most editors will try to keep the author's writing style and the original story. Some of the comments, there are 2 discussions going on in my Facebook group right now. One of them was from an author who got ripped off by an editor, and what actually had happened, this was kind of my suspicion, was just that good editors, they get kind of overworked and they're self-employed. They probably don't have a boss, so they may sometimes get too many clients, and then they can't meet their deadline. So what happens often is you're waiting for an editor to finish a book and they can't keep up with the deadlines because of whatever reasons, which is kind of a problem with if you're self-employed and you work with clients directly, especially if it's a long-term project. Editing usually takes about a month. It could take a couple months depending on how much developmental editing you're getting. So there's a rule with services. What is it? Speed, quality, price, pick 2. That's kind of a rule with online services. Speed, quality, price. It's difficult to get them all. It's difficult to get all of them really high quality, really low price, and really fast. It just doesn't really work that way. Most authors should prefer higher price, best quality rather than speed if you really want your book to be done right. But if you just publish lots of books and you just want a quick proofreader, you probably want a cheap, accurate proofreader to check for typos, and that can be worthwhile, but they won't really fix the story. So that was one discussion, and luckily it all worked out fine because the editor got back finally. I have also heard of cases, however, like I said, most editors are self-employed. They have their own business. They set up a website, they set up services or whatever, but they're still not really accountable to anybody. So it's not unheard of for editors to just receive a lot of money and then disappear or vanish, or they have a problem or they just stop replying to their client. So you need to make sure you pay through PayPal so that if there's a problem, you can ask for your money back if they disappear or something. Editors who ask for like cash or they say there's a problem with PayPal, that could be a red flag. On the other hand, because editors are small businesses, they don't want the authors to just get the service and then ask for their money back. So that's a lot of risk on them as well. If they put in the time, editing is not usually something you can get your money back for. Like if you spend $500 to $1,000, if they do the work, you can't really ask for a refund unless they have a refund guarantee in place. But most editors won't, because if they do the work, if they put in 20 hours or 50 hours or whatever editing your book, they deserve to get paid for that time. If you hired them and they're not actually cut out to do the job that they promise, or they're not actually that good of an editor, that's kind of on you. You can make a big fuss about it. You can complain. Often, like my online businesses, I always refund 100% because it's easier for me to just give them a refund and do all the work for free and lose than it would be to have an author going around bad-mouthing me and saying I ripped them off. So I lose money on a lot of services. No, I don't actually. I could lose money on services because I take all the risk and offer 100% guarantees. But because 95% of authors are satisfied with my work, at least 95%, especially with editing, I don't think I ever got refunds for editing. I can offer a guarantee because I don't have to use it very often. If they were a kind of a shitty editor and they didn't do good work, then they would have to give a bunch of refunds, and then they couldn't keep up. They couldn't afford it. Anyway, it's usually a red flag. I think PayPal is usually fine. If you have a problem with PayPal, you can, like if they disappear and they don't provide the work, you can ask to get your money back from the seller. Whereas if you pay, I paid someone for something like $500 probably for, what's it called? Reading my book into an audiobook. But they didn't want to use PayPal. They wanted to use some other service, and then they disappeared. And I didn't have any way of getting in touch with them because they were just like listed on some services website. So you do need to be careful. It's difficult choosing an editor. You want to hopefully find some that have great testimonials. But again, the problem is if they have their own website, they can put whatever testimonials they want. They could put fake testimonials. You also want to get, hopefully a lot of your friends will give you recommendations. But the other interesting thing about editing is that almost everybody's satisfied, because no matter what you do, if it's an improvement, the author's probably going to think you caught a lot of stuff, and they're going to be happy because they don't see the stuff that you didn't catch. Like it's hard to judge proofreading, which is difficult also because I'm not proofreading. I'm not doing editing anymore, but I have the Book Butchers, which is kind of a editing company that I helped set up. And all we do is find high quality editors and try to match them with authors and give a little bit of protection so that both editors and authors are a little safer. But it's hard to vet editors. They can have a lot of great testimonials. They can have, like I have a lot of authors who recommend editors and say they're awesome, and then I see that they don't do a very good job. A lot of editors, they're not formally trained. They don't have degrees, and you don't necessarily need a degree to be a great editor. You can just read a lot of books and be great at English and be a great editor, possibly. But there are also a lot of editors who they are amateur writers who became editors because their books aren't selling, and so if they can't write books that sell, I mean, there's an argument about what is it? Teachers, those who can't teach or coach or something like that. And it's not exactly true. I don't necessarily think it's always true, because I know a lot of people who can be very high level coaches, but they're just not writers. Like maybe they don't have the idea to do the plotting and to do the writing. So it's also kind of my problem with writing coaches. My big disconnect, the other conversation in my Facebook group. So the first one was about getting ripped off by an editor, which is something you do need to get to pay attention to. This author, she was angry because someone had given her a recommendation in one of my groups, and then she was disappointed by the editor. But like I said, the editor actually came back. Like they didn't disappear. Often, like maybe they don't check their email or they don't respond to emails for a week. I think in this case, she missed the deadline for a couple of weeks and wasn't responding to the author. So of course the author was angry and frustrated and freaking out a little. That's expected, but it's rare for an editor to completely disappear. I think sometimes if you're patient, I don't know. Anyway, she made a fuss about it online, and they saw that, and they, got in touch with her right away. So sometimes it can be worth it if you feel like someone screwed you off, just to make some noise about it. But I was gonna say, the second conversation, another editor had a developmental editor, and she was saying, her question is, this editor, she didn't feel like got her story. They didn't like her writing style. They didn't like the story, so they tried to change the story. So this is actually really interesting. I took a couple notes on what other people had said. And what I really liked was an editor's job is to improve what's there, not to tell a different story. I think that's a really good rule of thumb. I think that's what most authors should want and aspire towards in an editor. An editor takes the idea, they see your vision. They don't try to change the story. They just try to make it all better and improve it and fix it. If they don't like your story, if they don't like your writing, that's going to be difficult. Because the other comment someone mentioned was, I like to leave them inspired. So if you're paying a lot of money for a developmental editor who's kind of like your writing coach, they should inspire you. They should be your cheerleader and encourage you and give you positive emotions and make you feel good about the process. That's really hard sometimes, because if a good editor tears your writing apart, like the Book Butchers, the idea behind it is we rip your writing to shreds, because we'll red tape, red mark, everything, tear it apart and put it back together and make a better product out of it. And that's kind of what I did when I was editing. And this is also why I didn't really like editing very much, is I'm not a very warm person, I guess. So sometimes I will come off as too harsh with my editing. I'll make lots and lots of comments, like dozens of comments on every page, for 300 pages. So hundreds of comments. I'll make significant changes to the style of the story, of the construction. And I might really there are cases where I've pretty severely teared a book apart, and I'll just say, like, why would the character do this? The character doesn't have any motivation. This doesn't make any sense. Why does this universe work the way this does? Because often, like, for a lot of amateur writers, they just don't have a really strong story. They're not just plot holes. There's nothing interesting about what's happening. Or there's a lot of cool, interesting pieces, but it's just not a compelling story altogether. It doesn't all hold together. It's a lot of stuff, but it's not a story. So I will try really hard to help them see how they could take their notes, basically. If they think it's a finished novel, I think it's the beginning of what could become a marketable novel. The other difference, like when I edit, is I'm focused on market-based books. I want books to succeed. So if someone sends me a book and pays me for editing, I don't want them to just be happy that I help them tell their story. I want them to tell a story that readers love, because otherwise they're going to find out later they told a story nobody wants to read. That's why now I focus mostly on courses or something where I can help you to write a story that sells, or a book that sells, because I don't really want to charge thousands of dollars to help you edit your story. If I could be writing my own stories that sell, or if I could help other people write stories that sell. Also, a comment I gave this one author on my Facebook group was, a lot of first-time authors in general are always the least flexible, because they care the most. This is their first book. They're passionate about it. They've been working on it for years. There's usually too much emotional investment in the story, and they're not willing to let anything go because they've been working on it for so long. They think it's perfect. They're really excited about it. So if an editor tells them, this could work this other way, then it can be difficult to accept those changes, especially if you think you're ready to publish. You just want an editor to like fix it and clean it up so you can publish next month. If an editor tells you like this totally needs to be rewritten, that can be demotivating if you need to spend another 3 months or 6 months or a year to rewrite what you had thought was a perfect finished novel. I can understand why writers and authors would hate that kind of feedback. I still think it's more valuable to get that kind of feedback from a developmental editor than to get someone who will just fix your writing and improve your story without making it a better story, or at least telling you how you could make it a better story if you wanted to. Anyways, those are some comments. I do think, though, basically the editor's job is to improve what's there, not to tell a different story. I think that's a good rule of thumb. I think that's probably what most authors want, and why most authors, I have a tendency to give people what they need, but it's not what people want, which is why I have a hard time selling, because I won't sell something that doesn't work or that's not going to give you results, because I won't have confidence in it. So I can't confidently sell an editing package unless I'm making sure I'm helping authors actually create more marketable books, not just finish the books that they want to write. That's a personal choice. There's tons of editors and coaches out there who will help you to work on the book that you want to write. If you don't want to write books that make money, if you don't want to make a living as a writer, if you just want to get this book out there, there's also a whole different conversation about quality. There's a difference between writing the best quality book that you can and getting a developmental editor who is, has an MFA in creative writing, and they really focus on the craft and the writing, and they polish every sentence and they make it beautiful. And writing commercial fiction, which means strong storytelling, it's more about content and not the individual words. That's kind of what I'm focused on more, rather than the beautiful writing side of things. So there's a lot of people over here, and that's why 95% of authors, even authors who hire developmental editors, even authors who have MFAs, even like professional writers, it's why most of them don't make any money with the writing. It's why most of them can't get publishing deals. They can't make a living. Even if they have beautiful award-winning books, they still won't make money with their books, which it's a whole different thing. Like, you can choose to make money with your books, or you can choose to write high quality books, although I think that's a false dichotomy, which I'm not in support of, because I think the ultimate sign and representation of quality should be voted on by readers. I think if more readers are interested enough in your book to buy it, and they like your book enough to review it, so your book keeps selling, I think that's the highest mark of quality. I think that's where we should set our sights. I think providing more value to more people is the best way to make a living as a writer, or to make a living doing anything, but especially in the creative arts. So those are some comments. I don't know if this helps you very much to pick an editor. I do have some resources on self-editing. If you Google like how to self-edit your book, I also have a free video course on self-editing, which I'll probably redo this year. It's a couple years old already, and I've learned a lot. But those are considerations you might want to keep in mind. If you're looking for an editor, if you're hiring an editor, whether or not you need an editor, I would say maybe not in the beginning. Focus on content, craft, plotting, commercial fiction, telling good stories. Beta readers can work really well. Since I don't really need a developmental editor, I don't pay for proofreading because I get my documents pretty clean already. I'm kind of an editor by habit. So I'm an editor by habit, and I'm a writer by inclination or choice or something. I don't know. I will be a writer by occupation soon. I'm kind of not. I've been at the point where I'm making a full-time living with my writing. I'm not right now, but I will be again when I put a couple more books out. It does require that you put a lot of books out, probably conditionally, to be a full-time writer, and that's also why you may if you need to put out 10 books to be successful and make a living, you don't necessarily want to pay $2,000 for every book that you publish to get edited. Anyway, some considerations. I hope that this helps. I'll try to link to other resources on editing if this is useful, and I'm also going to post some videos soon about my editing process with fiction and nonfiction, because I'm going to be working on a course that's how to write commercial fiction and nonfiction, which will be free for a while if you buy the book anthology that I'm in, which is Write and Grow Rich, which will be really good. It's 99 cents. You get a whole bunch of free courses. Mine will be $297 course. You can get that for free this year. Later, that course will be $297. And then eventually, I'm thinking about doing something like a creative writing online MFA program. I have the qualifications and the accreditation or whatever to do that. I'm not sure if that's what I want to do. I don't necessarily want to be teaching writing. I'd rather be writing fiction full-time, and then maybe, putting my knowledge into courses where other people can consume them on their own independently. I'm not sure that I want to get into like coach writing or giving feedback on writers, although there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of opportunity, and that's a skill set that I have. So I may go in that direction a little bit. Before I do that, I'd really like to put out, 5 or 10 more novels and really prove that not only can I write novels that readers love, but also I can write novels that earn a living. Also do the same with nonfiction, and also build my platform a lot bigger. I feel like even though I have the skills, if I want to, I wouldn't want to do low cost, cheap. I don't edit anymore because I was charging 1 to 2 cents a word when I started. Book Butchers goes 2 cents up to 6 cents a word because I think having several rounds of revision is really critical if you want to really improve your writing. So implemented that. Because I have a PhD in literature, I probably wouldn't edit for less than 6 cents a word these days. Although I'm kind of interested in the idea of just one super expensive, not even expensive. I mean, there are other people who are charging $10,000 or $20,000 for a publishing package. So it wouldn't even be a super expensive publishing package. It would be mid-range probably. But my point was, if rather than just charging per word to do editing, I'm more interested in doing something like, a 2-year writing course that includes editing and feedback, or a publishing and book design package that includes a couple rounds of editing or something like that. Just like really big long-term packages rather than short-term work, because I don't want to be a full-time editor. I'm not a full-time cover designer anymore. I mostly want to be a full-time writer and man of letters. I saw a really funny thing. I was reading about MFAs and creative writing degrees, and there was one that said, this will prepare you to be a person of letters or whatever. So there's nothing about this will help you get a job, this will help you write books that sell. A person of letters is basically a person who doesn't work, a person who just creates content, creative content, and makes their living somehow from the sales of their creative content. That's kind of what I would like to be. There isn't, I don't think, a modern definition of man of letters that really fits. A man of letters would really be just someone with an inheritance that doesn't have to work. So they read books all day and write books. So that's kind of what I would like to be. But because I don't have an inheritance, or I don't come from, wealth, I need a base level of recurring income so that I can focus on those big creative products. Anyway, I got really off topic here, but I hope this video helps a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions about editing in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thanks. Bye-bye.